everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Film Freaks TV.
Yay.
And as you see, we're in a different location than we've ever been, I think. I don't
Yep.
think we've ever done this right here before.
Nope, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's a decided thing because it's in the shade, it's outside. We wanted to do it up there, but
His
unfortunately
place.
at my place, yes. So anyway, I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and I'm here with
Well, Presenza, otherwise known as the Moo Cow Moo.
Moo. All right, and we are here to talk about the 1971 film, The French Connection, which we decided to prop up on different books and other shit, just
Give
so you
it
can see
props.
it. Yeah, prop it up on props. So, first of all, I'm going to go into a little background of the film that I found out. This was the second time I saw it, and everything. And I don't know, how many times have you seen it?
Oh, probably half a dozen times, but it's been a good 20, 25 years since I've seen it.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
So you used to watch it all the time, but then kind
Yeah.
of haven't.
It's one of those movies that back in the day used to come on HBO, and so I'd watch it because it was a good movie.
Yeah,
A
there
really
you go.
good movie.
It's a really good
Academy Award winning movie.
and rest in peace, William Friedkin. We decided to do this because William Friedkin just passed away,
Yeah,
and
unfortunately.
yeah, we'll get into that a little bit. Um, so my background on the film is first of all, as we said, directed by William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist, which is amazing.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, we're eventually gonna do it for Film Freaks or so. Yeah, I
We will
think Film
cover a
Freaks.
number of Willie Friedkin's
I
movies.
know, definitely. He also did Cruising, Sorcerer, and many, many, many more. Just don't even need to don't even need to go down that rabbit hole. Um he just passed away August 7th, 2023 at the age of 87. Unfortunately, it was like a mixture of like pneumonia and like heart issues.
Hmm.
So it was written by Ernest Tidyman. I don't know if it's Tidyman or something or Tidyman,
Tidyman.
but who created Shaft? He was the creator of Shaft, so he did some cop stuff before this.
Complicated man.
Yeah. He also wrote High Plains Drifter, Street People, and A Force of One with Chuck Norris, which I haven't seen that one, but I kind of want to. Now I want it definitely because it was written by the guy who did French Connection. Um, he passed away July 14th, 1984, at the age of 56 due to complications with a perforated ulcer.
Hmm.
So sadly, you're going to hear a few of those things that people have passed away, and some I'll say what they passed away with, some I won't. Based on the book by author Robin Moore, who wrote the novels for The Green Beret, The Happy Hooker, and also wrote movies like Hot Pants Holiday and Ichian.
Oh,
Um,
Inchon? He
Inchon.
did Inchon?
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's a bunch of crappy ones in there. I'm surprised.
Yeah. Inchon was his last one, too. So, like, I guess after that, he just kind of quit, you know. Um, Interestingly, also wrote the song for the Ballad of the Green Berets, which has been used in a lot of movies. He passed away February 21st, 2008, at the age of 82. So, but he had stopped working. I think Incheon was in the was it 90s or something or
Inchon, I think, was either late 80s or early like 1990. 91.
okay. Now the stars. Whoa, hold on. Actually, wait. Yeah, so we'll go into the stars. The stars of the film are Gene Hackman, who's still alive.
Yay.
We love him. We
One of
just
my
wish he'd
favorite actors.
still be working, but he hasn't done anything in a while. He's kind of retired. Who played Jimmy Popeye Doyle. He was Lex Luthor in the Superman movies, the Christopher Reeves ones. He also was in The Conversation, A Bridge Too Far, Hoosiers, and many, many more. Um,
Mississippi Burning.
Mississippi Burning, Get Shorty. I
Get
mean, I
Shorty.
like literally could name so many. I've
Great
only decided
Hollywood
to
actor.
name like four.
Great Hollywood actor.
Yeah, fantastic. Roy Scheider, who played Buddy Cloudy Russo, was in Jaws, All That Jazz, Sorcerer with William
Mm-hmm.
Friedkin, Marathon Man, and many others. He passed away February 10th, 2008, at the age of 75. I remember because it was the internet days still, or whatever. And I remember everybody on like on Facebook or MySpace or something saying rest in peace,
Yeah.
Roy Scheider, and it was a big deal because we all were sad.
Yep. Yep.
We
Yep.
lost we lost our classic
Yep.
actor.
He was a good actor too.
Yep. Fernando Rey, who played Elaine Charnier, was in a Moon Over. It was in Moon Over Parador. I had to put this in. He was in Star Night with fucking Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, he was on a whole bunch of movies.
Angel of Death, and many, many more. He passed away March 9th, 1994, at the age of 76.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these guys lived a pretty good life, and some still living, including this one. Tony LaBlanca, who played Sal Boca, was in Nixon, The Honeymoon Killers, and Kill the Irishman, and many more. And he's still alive, apparently. Yep. So I don't know if he's still acting or not, but
so those are four big time actors.
Yeah, those are the only ones I added into my background because I mean, there's so many good actors that were in this movie and characters, but I want to go right into the crew work. So Don Ellis was the composer who did the music. He also did the music for the Kansas City Bomber, the Seven Ups, which starred Roy Scheider. He also came back to do the French Connection too, so he did the music for that. And many more. Sadly, he passed away December 17th, 1978, at the age of 44.
Ooh, that's young.
And due to a heart attack too. He could have given us a lot more great music, but unfortunately, that was not the plan in the universe. Owen Roisman was the cinematographer who did the cinematographer for 3 Days of the Condor, the original Stepford Wives, Tootsie, and many, many others. Like literally, if you look his thing up, you will see like a list of movies you've seen or at least heard of.
Great cinematography in this film. Some iconic shots there.
He passed away January 6th of this year. So sadly, we lost two people this year.
Wow, that's amazing.
He lasted that long, but fortunately, he died then.
It smells like garbage out.
Probably. Oh yeah, we're right next to a sewer pump. Oh. Gerald B. Greenberg, who did the editing, also did the editing for films like Taking of Pelham 123, Apocalypse Now, Kramer versus Kramer, Scarface. I mean, editing was pretty good. Like,
sure,
I never noticed any problems with the editing.
No, like I said, the early half of the movie, the pacing I thought was a little lax. But
a lot of that has to do with William Friedkin, probably too.
Picks up.
And we'll probably get into that. But he passed away December 22nd of 2017. So that was my little background of some information about some of the people here. And sorry, I got a little morbid. And everybody's death.
Of course, there was an awful lot of Academy Awards, and the thing that most people know about this film is the iconic chase scene where Gene Hackman's in the car chasing after the French guy, Frog Number 2, on the train, the elevated train in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. And that is just, most people know because that was just an amazeballs scene. And it's the sort of thing that you could not happen today because it was an unchoreographed chase scene that, they had some cops that sort of cleared a 5-block radius, but otherwise, those were basically regular people driving around, and they had the stuntman drive, like a bat out of hell, and they filmed it. And I think they filmed it pretty much just once. And they did actually have a crash, during it. And I think somebody did get injured, but for insurance purposes, you could never do that now. Never.
Nope. I think Hollywood was a lot more relaxed in the 70s.
Yeah, but they made better movies. They took chances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a winner of the Best Picture Oscar of that year, which was 1972.
Well deserved.
Let's see, Best Actor in the Leading Role, Gene Hackman winner. Oscar winner for Best Director, William Friedkin.
Mm-hmm.
Oscar winner for Best Screenplay by Ernest Tidyman, and winner for Best Editing by Gerald B. Greenberg. So it was also nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role by Roy Scheider. It was nominated for Best Cinematography for Owen. Oscar nominee for Best Sound by Theodore Soderbergh and Christopher Newman, and that was it that it was
Newman.
nominated and won. So I mean that's like 10, I think, right there,
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah. No,
whew,
it was a great film, and as we mentioned, they did end up doing French Connection 2 a few years later. So
yeah, 4 years later
we'll have to cover that one because it's a good movie too. It's not quite as good as this one,
and it's
but
more Popeye Doyle, right?
yeah.
Okay. But Roy Scheider did not come back for that one, right?
I don't remember honestly
I don't
because
think I saw him on the
I
casting.
don't think so. But yeah, definitely Gene Hackman. But it's been a few years since I've seen that one as
I
well.
was telling Paul earlier that I recently heard that Roy Scheider does not like did not like sequels, did not like coming back for sequels, did not want anything to do with sequels. He just wanted to make one really good movie and then move on. I don't think he wanted sequels because, a lot of times in Hollywood, the sequels can tarnish the original just by being
Oh
so
yeah, and
bad.
that's typically what happens. But usually it's because in the first movie the story's over with, and then they usually have to come up with some other reason why you keep going. In the French Connections case, though, there was more to the story, and in fact, you look at the ending. The ending is rather ambiguous because it's not what most people expected, and like there's a gunshot, and we're like, who got shot? We're not really sure, and then they kind of talk about like what happens to certain people, and like the cops were kicked off the case and the bad guy gets away, and
Mm.
so there are loose ends at the end of this one, so it kind of makes sense. Plus, in reality there was more going on in the story too, so it kind of makes sense that they would do the movie. Now I assume that they did it pretty close after, but I guess it took a few years for them to actually do it. I don't know if it was a funding issue or what,
Yeah,
but
weird because if it won 5 Academy Awards and
right,
everything, you would think like they'd be like pushing it for like let's get this sequel made.
so there's
But
probably a story behind that,
well, also, yeah, there probably was because my other idea goes to what you're saying. This was a true story. This wasn't like,
right?
this wasn't a fictional character that didn't, that was made up to. It's not RoboCop, where you can do 3 or 4 movies because it's a fictional cop story. You know what I mean? This is a real story, and in order to continue a real story you have to continue it like the real story. What happened next?
Right.
And maybe it took 3 years for them to go, okay, some more stuff happened with Popeye Doyle. Let's talk about that,
Mm.
and
Well, and they
stuff.
ended up getting probably a different writer and a different director.
Oh, they got a different director,
Yeah,
John
John
Frankenheimer,
Frankenheimer.
which I absolutely like. He is your go-to guy apparently when you want a sequel or like,
Yeah, he's a
you
good
know,
director too. He's not quite at the same level, but he's almost there.
yeah, he's great.
But it's interesting because, as I was telling Moody earlier, how this is the first part of a continuing story with the French Connection. It's covered, the front part of it is covered with French Connection 1 and will be eventually with French Connection 2. And then when we did Prince of the City, that same heroine ends up starting, spawning its own story because the cops end up ripping it off, and or someone rips it off, and it ends up going on to the story behind Prince of the City, where the police department in New York City end up taking a fall, and they end up being dispersed, and there's been a huge amount of changes in the city. And I love how both of those movies bookend not only that story, which was a true story, but it also shows, a period of New York City that's long gone that I've always been fascinated with. And that's the sort of dirty, grimy, crime ridden, dangerous New York City from I'd say really from the 50s through the 60s into the 70s. And they didn't really clean it up until like the mid 80s. And that world is long gone, but I was always fascinated, and there's a number of really good movies. Wolfen is set in there, and Koyaanisqatsi shows some of the urban decay and the teardowns, some of that, and it's a really interesting thing. And you could do a whole special around all the different films that are set up at that period. It's very
mm,
interesting, and
like
now
it's
it's
on its own
it's
universe.
all
Yeah.
different now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So people who've only known New York City now, they don't understand. It was a completely different city 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
We'll
Completely different.
definitely get into that, but I do want to mention that I just looked it up. apparently we did Prince of the City last season for your finale episode
Mm-hmm.
of that season, and so I think it's great that, and we're kind of continuing this story, and then I told them maybe next year we'll do like Serpico or something,
Yeah,
and
that's a great movie too.
yeah, stuff like that, to continue with the kind of crime drama theme stuff, which you were like, we can make the whole podcast just on that, like
Yeah.
so many
Gritty crime drama.
gritty crime dramas, especially in the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were a lot that just it became its own subgenre of drama.
Although to be fair, I think late 60s is kind of where it started. Like I'm thinking The Detective with Frank Sinatra. It was when he was still in his I'm a tough guy kind of phase, and it was a very, very
Wait,
gritty.
he left that phase?
Well, yeah, he spent most of his phase trying to convince everyone, but he made this tough guy detective New York City gritty movie back then called The Detective, and I think it was 68 or 69, and yeah, and it's sort of also as a mirror to that whole world. Not quite as good as these movies are, but for a Sinatra movie, it was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So
You gotta give Sinatra some props, every now and then. He gets props all the time. Like everybody
well,
fucking loves that
the
dude.
thing about it is that he had enough money and enough clout to make sure that the people he worked with were really, really good. So
Yeah.
good directors, good writers, good everybody.
I
So he didn't want to look bad.
I remember when we were doing the killing for Criterion Watch, we were talking about we learned that like Frank Sinatra wanted the killing, and then the people paid, and Stanley Kubrick got to make the
Right.
killing. But yeah, if Frank Sinatra had made it, they would have gotten like another great director at
And
that time, but like not somebody new and
there's
young.
another gritty crime drama.
Yeah, yeah. There's
So
so many out there, but that we did that for Criterion Watch because it was Criterion, so we had to do that. And
and it's I guess because this movie is the rights are still owned by I don't know who owns it. Is it Warner Brothers or whoever? But yeah,
so no, it's a 20th Century
20th
Fox.
Century Fox. Yeah, but this is clearly Criterion worthy. It's just that they're not going to let this go out of their
They
system.
might.
They might.
The only reason I'm saying that is because you can actually find this movie on the Criterion Channel, and so we're gonna go into that. So there's a lot of drama with that. Like they censored the N word a couple times, probably even the S word, because people have said, I'm gonna say it. I don't mean like this isn't me being, whatever. It's just it's a word, but it's unpleasant word, and it's the word spick.
And
And
it's just because that's what the language was used back then.
right,
Doesn't mean anything now. I mean, sure it does, but you have to understand
it does still, but
context means everything.
it does, and I mean, you really can't say any of these words now, like, and they're very, people are very touchy, but I don't even put it in my movies. Um, Tarantino puts it in his movies, the N word in his movies all the time, or he put the S word in there if it's meant to be there for the historical time period. But I'm sure if he were making a character for today, he would have to look at
I mean,
how people just talk today.
yeah, if you're making a movie that has a shitty character, they're going to speak like a shitty character.
Right.
Okay, they're
And
not going to be polite. That's just the
and
way it is.
that's sort of what William Friedkin said in the commentary track for this movie is basically when Popeye Doyle speaks like that, that goes into the character Popeye Doyle. That's
Sure.
how he is.
And he's not a sweet, lovable character.
No.
He's kind of an asshole, honestly, but he's a driven asshole, and he's really trying to do what he can in order to break up the drug ring that's going on. And he doesn't really care whose toes he treads on or what happens. I mean, he ends up shooting another cop, and he's
And he doesn't
okay with it.
care.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
okay with it.
Because he's just trying to get his man. He
Right.
doesn't care if who dies or who gets in the way in the process because
And there are people like that.
that's that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Especially cops. Like there are a lot of cops out there that just want to like get the bad guy because they want to get them off the streets. Understandably, like isn't is I mean, ultimately that's what you want, right? Like you want your police officers to get these bad guys off the streets so we don't have to deal with them. And when he's doing everything he can to do it, he'll do it.
And I love the fact that it's, you know, it's not like the Hollywood of today where they would have changed it and would have added a romantic angle and they would have changed it so there's a happy ending. Yeah, no, they let it go the way it was. You know, the cops get the heroin and break up the drug ring, but the main bad guy gets away, and the cops end up getting kicked off the force because of all the shit that they pulled in order to get what they got. So
Exactly.
there are consequences, and those consequences come home. So that's great. I love to see that. You know,
So let's take it back to the beginning of the movie, and everything. Kind of go through it a little bit. So like in the beginning of the movie, we're in France. What was it?
Marseille,
Marseille, and it was nasty
a
looking.
grungy port town through which an area through which all the drugs of Europe go through, and then also go to America because Marseille is a much larger harbor that can accommodate ships than really I think anything that Italy has. So when the mob is running their drugs, they're going to go through Marseille.
Exactly. Then, so then we see which character was it that shot? It wasn't the main guy, was it?
It
Main
was
bad
Frog
guy.
number two.
Frog number two.
Yeah,
So frog number two shoots this guy who's just he's got
he's a police guy. He's a French policeman who's been following them
yeah, following him and he shoots him and
in the
he
face.
yeah, and we thought he was like what? He looked like he was gonna steal the bread, but he stole
He
whatever
took a
was
piece off and threw the rest there,
yeah.
which I understand because French bread really good. Don't waste that.
Don't waste that. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't take the whole thing.
A
Why not?
fresh baguette, hell, I would have. Yeah,
Why
well, I
not?
mean, he's in France. You can get that every corner. So
Yeah. Oh, there you go. So they
not
go,
here.
he moves on, and we go into New York, where we see Popeye and Cloudy working a case. Popeye was dressed as a fucking Santa Claus. I was,
Which makes sense.
yeah, if all the people are gonna dress like Bud, I guess it'll be Popeye.
And
And
Cloudy's there behind a hot dog stand.
yep. And then they go and chase this guy down, and the guy stabs um,
Splash.
flashes poor Cloudy, and Cloudy has to like you were like, oh, continuity, see, they know continuity. But then later you did catch a continuity error,
Yeah.
and that was kind of funny. Um, but given the circumstances of that scene of like
That
running
was
and
a lot
everything,
going
that there
on.
was a lot going on.
Yeah.
I guarantee there was hard to for a continuity person to keep up, especially like when you only get like one take because you're running through the
Well,
streets.
and then in that one, there probably were a number of takes, and that particular scene that got woven in there probably looked better than some of
Yeah,
the other ones, even though he was taking his coat off, and then you see him in the very next scene with the coat back on again. And,
yeah.
so sorry, most people aren't going to notice that. They're noticing the action.
So they catch the guy gives him some information, I guess, 'cause they like basically threaten him, like scare the shit out of the guy.
Oh yeah, back in the day, that's what you did. You took your informant, you took him to the back alley, and you beat the hell out of them until they gave you the information. That was, strictly the way things cops did it back then. Probably now too, but
Maybe.
mostly back then.
I mean, I don't know. You don't really in movies today, you don't even see that scene
Yeah,
anymore.
it's a very different world. New York City was broke by then, so they couldn't really afford to really pay cops or public servants at that point, which is why you had a lot of corrupt cops that were tied in with the mob and why that whole city needed to be cleaned up. It was all because the city was broke and they just allowed the whole place to decay, and it led to all these other problems. And so that's the thing about these two cops is that, Cloudy and Popeye are like two of the cleaner guys, and they have to be like super alpha males in order to get what they need to get done.
Was it
You know,
Giuliani who cleaned up the city?
partially,
So who was
but
the
it
other
was it
mayor?
was it was starting before him. But honestly, it was really corporations coming in and starting to buy everything. That's really what cleaned it up. Is they came in with their money and started buying up real estate and
So you don't like corporations though, kind of thing, right? Necessarily. But do you think that was the right thing? Do you think that
I
was the
mean,
best thing?
yes and no. On the other hand, I mean, it makes it safer for tourists and there's more money involved. On the other hand, now that the city's been gentrified to the point that it is, nobody can afford to live there. I mean, it's one of the most expensive cities in the world, really.
Mm.
Instead of paying, $800 a month, now you're paying $5,000 a month. So you can't afford it anymore. It also drove away all of the mom and pop businesses. All that stuff's gone. It's all corporate stuff because they're the only ones who can afford it. And then like all the artists are gone, all the musicians are gone, all of that stuff is gone, all the stuff that gave New York City character, you know. Yes, it's safer more or less, and yes, there's not much mob stuff going on anymore, but the price of which is now, it's more like a shopping mall, like a very corporate shopping mall, you know. It's a trade-off, you know.
I remember when I was in New York for the first time, I was like scared I was gonna be mugged. And the guy I was with just told me like nobody mugs people in New York City anymore because there are cops on every
Right, yeah,
corner,
it's
you
different
know.
now. I mean, I caught the tail end of that in the early 80s, just as they were starting to clean everything up. And you know, I got to see the city, you know, back then when it still had character, you know what I mean? And there were
Right.
still things like, you know, adult places on all the corners and bars all over the place. And, you know, I mean, I'm not saying it was a good thing, but it wasn't like anywhere else in the world. And it was very unique. And there was a lot of interesting stories, and you could do all kinds of stuff. I remember we used to, you know, shopping would be to go onto the train, and then you would go all the way up to like 125th Street, and you get out. And when you'd get out, there were all these people there who had stolen stuff from other places, and you would buy, like, I used to buy my TDK tapes there. You would just get off, and someone would offer you like three of them for $5, and that's half the price than if you bought in the store. So you'd buy all these hot things, and then you get
You
back on
bought
the train and go,
stuff?
shit, yeah, I was a broke teenager. 16 years old. I was looking for any bargain I could. And it was great. You could take the train from Wilmington to New York City and be there in 2 hours. You get to run around the city, get into all kinds of trouble. I remember we used to go into the downtown skyscrapers, and you get in the bottom out floor elevator, and then you would take it all the way to the top. Then you get off and get on the next one, go all the way to the bottom. And you just keep doing that over and over. And just,
That was trouble?
no, that was just goofy shit that you do as a teenage kid.
Oh, okay.
But you know, even at 16, we were going into some of the adult places and some of the bars and running around, and nobody really cared as long as you had some money.
No.
It was a different world. Yeah, it's
Well,
not, you
there you
can't do
go.
that now.
Nope.
I mean, it's good. I mean, there are a lot of people who got into serious trouble, and you know, we could have, but we didn't. I have a lot of stories I could tell you about my adventures in New York City.
All
But yeah,
right.
it
We'll
was
save
pretty
that for a
fun.
whole nother
Yeah,
show.
we'll say that for another show.
All right. Anyway, to go back, so they find out I guess they get some information. I don't know if I'm skipping around or whatnot, but they get some information about this.
Yeah, they
That
find out about the fact that the city is dry, nobody's got heroin,
hmm.
and then B, there's a big shipment coming in.
Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about that really awesome scene though. Like one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they're going around in the bar and they're just like attacking everybody, yelling at them, and they're like, "Who's my what? You know, what's my name?" And the guy's like, Popeye,
Did you pick
or
your
you
feet,
know, or
Poughkeepsie?
Doyle or whatever, and he's like, "I mean, Mr. Doyle," you know, right? And yeah, exactly. And then they pick one guy out of the group, and he starts yelling at him, and then kicks him into another room, and it turns out to be his informant.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
his buddy.
that explains that the place is dry and that there's a big shipment coming in that's going to please everybody. You know,
Everyone's going to get well.
yeah, everyone's going to get well, which I guess makes sense. We're junkies,
Mm.
you know, right? So now all of a sudden all the junkies are going to get their
And then he's
fix.
like, "Where do you want it?" Like, huh? Where do you want it? He's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess right here." And then he smacks him or
Was
punches him.
the first scene ever to do that? Because I've seen that, I've heard that before in other movies where do you want it? And then they punch him or whatever,
Right, or
you
shoot
know?
them or something.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, so I think that was from that.
To keep his cover.
Yeah, the people have been inspired by this movie, you know.
Oh yeah, they've inspired in a lot of ways, definitely.
Um, and so yeah, so they find out that there's this shipment coming in and everything, and so by the French, and so they start kind of trailing these French guys who they find out about, you know, information.
Yeah, and they tied him into this little local guy who owns a little shop. Him and his wife have been doing some crooked shit, and they're somehow he's their connection, and they don't know why. This little guy is mixed up with the French guy, and it turns out the little guy is, as Tony Lobianco has set up some kind of a deal with the bigwig, Weinstock, I think his name
Wine
was.
stock, yeah.
Yeah, so he's kind of the go-between who's setting up the deal that's going down, and Yeah, and so that's what Popeye and the other guy run into and figure out. But he's got to prove it, and he's getting a lot of flack from his sergeant because they don't believe him, and they finally get a wiretap, and then they make him take a couple of feds along, and the Fed guy doesn't like him at all, and there's a lot of personality
Oh yeah,
clashes.
yeah. There's one scene was like, I don't like, I don't like Popeye, blah 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 blah, and then, Roy Scheider gets really pissed off and like attacks him or whatever, and then he's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, well, and when you go and you hear about him, you can understand it. He says, the last time you had a hunch, a policeman got killed.
Right.
So you can understand.
And now they can definitely say another policeman got killed,
Right,
So
right,
like he has this history of not even caring,
right.
So he just doesn't.
And it's again the consequences come home. Unlike say Murtaugh and what's his face and all those movies where they could just do whatever they want.
Comedies. So
Want and they can get away with
action
it.
comedies. It's like the Beverly Hills Cop movies.
Yeah.
Like, Axel Foley can do whatever he wants. He can get away with whatever he wants because it's just silly shit. It's not truthful. That's not grit. It's not drama. It's just pure, just silliness for, sake of pure silliness,
Right.
Or whatever, which I like. I mean, I still like that kind of stuff. I love Lethal Weapon. I love, you know, um, I love Beverly Hills Cop. Those are just fun, goofy movies for me to watch, whenever I'm in the mood. But this movie is something like I'll watch again and again, but it's not something like I could put on like 3 or 4 times in a day. You might
Yeah,
be able to, but
it's been many years since I sat and
yeah,
watched the whole thing.
yeah, because it's just something that you have to sort of,
I got to be in the mood for it.
yeah. And I think when I told you about it, I mean, I don't know if you were, I mean, you were kind of excited, but you were probably like a little bit like, oh, okay.
The only reason is just because I figured since you wanted to do a freaking movie, I assumed you were going to do Exorcist.
Yeah, and I could have done Exorcist, and in fact,
Which is fine. I'll do
but that's
Exorcist.
your favorite. That's your
It
favorite of
is.
his, and
Absolutely.
this isn't honestly. Exorcist is my favorite too. I think I told you it was like French Connection is my favorite. I've only seen it once, and now that I saw it again, it's a pretty good movie. I mean, it's really good. It's a great fucking movie. It's just The Exorcist. There's just something about
Right.
that
It's a
movie that just,
masterpiece.
yeah, that's a masterpiece. And it didn't win as many Academy Awards,
And I've got a theory why too.
It's because horror, right?
Well, that and plus it shocked the living hell out of everyone.
Yeah.
People today who still refuse to go see it because they're too afraid to watch the film.
Watch the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like me and the witch, you know.
I mean, you're not going to see anybody say that about French Connection. But
Exactly.
Exorcist is it's just a different level. But this is still an excellent film, and yeah, won a bunch of Academy Awards. And if you're a Gene Hackman fan, this is the movie that made him a star.
This
He was famous, he was a good actor, but this was the movie that made him.
the
You
movie that made Gene Hackman.
Yeah,
And it's true. Like this movie was incredible. Like and Gene Hackman was the star. Like
yeah.
he was, there you see so many movies these days, especially back in that time period, where you can't tell which is the lead or whatever because two people want to be sort of billed next to each other and they're kind of fighting for it or whatever. And you would think Roy Scheider, but he's not even billed second; he's billed third because your boy, what's his name for something Ray?
Oh yeah, Fernando Rey.
Fernando Ray was billed second because, and he was he was the bad guy. He's the lead bad
Well,
guy,
he's
he's
an
the villain.
international film star. Everybody knows him. And I love how he did that last little whoop and he got back onto the train
Yep,
and managed to get off. And he's like,
yep.
that's
So that was
great.
so funny because then it came back later with Popeye when he caught him. Goes,
Yeah, that was great.
right? So there's like little callbacks and little things like that just really worked for this film, I think. And I don't know, like just everything about this movie.
Yeah, it speaks truth, the whole thing. The only part that always gets me is, when at the end of the chase scene, after you go through all of that, and Popeye just happens to find the one spot in this big long ass train where frog number two just happens to walk out and he sees him. I'm like, yeah, that's a little convenient, but
But did that happen?
that I couldn't tell you.
And I have to look that up. This movie has some great special features. We'll get to it at the end of the movie. We'll tell you all the special features. But one of them is about the real French Connection and stuff, and probably like a little biopic about what happened, and stuff, which I think is a great little thing to have for these things because I think more Blu-rays should go into the history of the real shit that happened in these movies.
Especially if it's a movie that's based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
But yeah, so Popeye finds out about the French guys and they go after them. And yeah, you said there's the great scene of going on the
Well, what
well,
happens is that
he gets
frog
made.
number two decides he's going to go and assassinate him, and so he takes a
Actually,
shot.
before then, was when no, it was before then was the train scene of jumping on the train and him jumping off the train. That
Yeah,
was actually before then because like frog number one and like look, this is like literally their
what
character
they called
names.
them.
Yeah, what they call them. So frog number one goes on the train. Gene Hackman gets on the train, gets off the train, gets on the train, eventually gets off the train. He said bye bye.
Right,
Right. So he made him. So he goes to one of his friends and says, or
frog
not
number
one of his
two.
friends, one of the people that said, and frog number two is like, I can just kill him and we're going to be out in a couple days anyway. Like the cops won't really come after us because
Right.
we'll be gone. And then he said, gives him the A-OK to do it. So he tries to assassinate him in a fucking like in
Broad daylight
broad
in a
daylight, a
park.
public scene, apart where everybody's around.
Shoot the mother with a baby in a
Oh
carriage.
man,
Yeah, that was
once
bad.
again, something I'm afraid people would not want, like a sniper taking people out like that would not be something that's easily okayed by
Yeah,
Hollywood these
and
days.
that's what initiates the big long chase.
Yeah, and it initiates this big long chase where the guy gets on the
Classic scene.
train, uh, and then
I think even the Simpsons covered it. I think the
like
Simpsons did a
parodied
better.
it.
Yeah. So it's an iconic scene when the Simpsons are parodying it.
We watched for Hollywood Boulevard podcast. We watched Running Scared,
Mm,
and that had an L train scene that was pretty freaking crazy, like
nice.
switching up and doing all these things. That I was like, man, for a for 80s comedy, like buddy cop comedy, like it was pretty, had some pretty cool chase scenes and stuff too. But yeah, so they get on the train. He gets on the train. The other guy does not, Doyle does not get on, so he gets commandeers a vehicle and pretty much steals it, from the guy. And the guy's like, "What am I getting it back?" And after we saw it at the end, he's like crashing into things, and I wonder how much of was that chasing you said was actually all of it
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah.
because
Now it wasn't Gene Hackman doing it. I mean, he only did little tiny bits of it, but
yeah,
it was mostly stuntmen. And I think they had some cops in the stuntman car, and they tried to clear out as much as they could. But the fact is, most of that traffic going back and forth was real traffic, and so yeah, that's just crazy.
yeah. I wonder how much of it was actually real people like going, "Oh my god, I'm about to get crushed by a
Well,
car."
yeah, at least one of those crashes that is filmed was an actual real crash that was unplanned. So I can tell you that much.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's insurance issues right
Oof.
there. Like nowadays, it'd be even
Oh,
worse.
you'd never do that.
Yeah,
You'd never get permission, and if you did it without permission, you'd never work for Hollywood again.
yeah, especially if there's an accident like that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, they have so they have this big long chase scene sort of thing. The guy's on the train. He basically tries to get the driver to to keep it going, just not stopping
And
at
that's
the
the other
station.
part of the film where I was kind of like, because he finally makes the guy passes out because he's freaked out by the whole thing, and
I
then
thought he gets shot.
he shoots the cop,
Okay,
but not the driver.
okay, I thought somehow it might have ricocheted and hit him,
No,
but
no, no. He just collapses because he's the stress, and so the train collides with the other train, and when that happens, everybody gets knocked back, and he drops his gun, and you see the gun skitter across the train floor. Pick it up. It's not going anywhere. It's in the same car. Why did you scramble around and find it? It's your gun. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he runs around without it. And I'm like, that's what you get.
once again, that might have been real. Some of
Possibly.
that could have actually happened because sometimes in the midst of like that stuff, you're not thinking about anything, but I need to get the fuck off this train before I, have to shoot other people or whatever and get myself out of here because somebody might shoot me while I'm looking for the gun.
I could tell you what, I'd be looking for the gun.
Uh, so he gets out of the train and he gets shot by Popeye Doyle in the back and killed.
Yeah, that's
And
the iconic scene where he's like, oh, and falls backwards, which
what
is
are you
not.
saying? Iconic, like people parodied it or something? Like
Yeah,
people have
that's besides the chase, the shot on the stairwell is the other
the
scene
stuff
that
that
most
people
people
always
know about.
remember
Yeah,
about. Yeah. So he died, and then
because typical for Popeye Doyle, you want it for questioning, kill him.
yeah, kill him because I mean, even if he like said, hey, whatever, you know, even if he went to jail, he would never have given anything up, and he probably could have gotten out.
Well,
So
now his superiors understand what's going on. They find a car that is connected to him, and then this
is that
guy
the
named,
French Connection?
yeah,
Okay.
and then this other guy Devereaux, who's being used as a patsy by the frog number one, and Devereaux doesn't know it, but they're using his car to smuggle in all the drugs.
He's like either a filmmaker or an actor,
I think he's a news guy or something like that.
something like
So
that.
like a
But
news personality or TV personality.
he's a TV personality, and he just was using the car and coming to the States for that, whatever, to help them out. And it turns out
Right.
that
Because
they're using his car
right,
for
Doyle
drugs.
Doyle follows them follow, they find the car, and he insists that the car is dirty. And so they sit and they watch it and they watch it and they watch it and nothing's happening. And finally a group of Hispanic gang comes over and he thinks that that's the drug people, but instead they're actually ripping the car off. They're trying to steal the tires and shit because that's what they did back then. So he's frustrated.
I still do that shit
Yeah, I
for some.
guess they steal catalytic converters now.
Yeah, they still Cadillac converters
But
now.
so he has the car dragged to the shop in the police department, and they're tearing it apart because he's insisting that there's drugs
Tearing
in
my
there.
car apart, Lisa.
And they're like, we've tearing the whole damn thing apart from the rocker panels, and we still can't find it. And he's like, well, try the rocker panels. And lo and behold, they pull apart the rocker panels, and there it is.
That was the funniest scene too, because they're like, because Roy Scheider looks over, goes, how much did it weigh when it came in? And like they said how much it weighed, and he goes, this thing says it weighs this
120
much.
pounds over.
Yeah, 122 pounds over. He goes, wait a minute. The only thing we didn't take out is what was it?
The rocker
The
panels.
rocker panels. He goes, you're like, idiot, like you're supposed to take everything out, so they take out the rocker
Now,
panels and
what's not shown, and it's kind of assumed, is so Devereaux's there, and he complains that he's been there for 4 hours. Well, 4 hours have passed, and they tore that car apart, so they had to put it all back together in the span of 4 hours, and in such a way that they couldn't notice it. So that stretches believability just a little bit, but
I,
apparently that happened. So
I thought it was like a brand new car that looked just like it or
what
something,
are the
and
odds that
then
they're going to have a brand new car that looks just
I
like
don't
it?
know. What are the odds that they're going to be able to do this in 4 hours?
That's what I mean.
I
It's
just like,
the movie kind of, so 4 hours later they get the car back and they believe it.
yeah, that's the only problem I have with the movie.
And then
Really
they
was
tuck
that
all the drugs back in, and then the drug deal gets made, but the cops know about it, so they let it happen so that they can catch everyone.
to catch everybody, and then they do. So they let them do it because like usually in a lot of these scenes, even in the 70s and 80s, they would have these scenes where the cars, like the cops would just swoop in on the people right after the drug deal is done. They'd be like, there's somebody there. But like they were in a space where they couldn't do that. So
Yeah, they were on an island, so the only way off was that one bridge, and
yeah,
they blocked it.
they blocked it, which was a great scene because like when they were driving, I knew exactly what was going to happen. There was going to be a bunch of cops there already waiting for them, and there was. And then that's when Popeye gives a little wave, and they try to go backwards, and there's this big another chase scene that ends with bunch of people getting shot at. There's a little bit of
Tony LoBianco's character gets killed.
yeah, Tony LaBianchi's character gets killed. And then what is it? The the tear gas like brings them all out, and they're just like, we're done.
Except for frog number one.
Except for frog number one, which Gene Hackman has been chasing, and what's his name?
Cloudy.
Cloudy comes in next to him and says he'll help him, track this guy down. And the first thing he does is he shoots who he thinks is the guy, and it turns out to be I forgot what
Merrick.
What? Merrick. And then he ends up
he was one of the Fed guys that was
one of the Fed
guy
guys
that he had the personality conflict with.
Yeah, the guy that didn't like him.
And it's funny because Cloudy's like, "You shot Merrick," and he's like, "Frog number one's in there. I'm gonna go get him." It's like, dude, you just shot a cop. He didn't care.
Nope.
So then he goes running in after him, and then you hear a gunshot, and then the movie fades out, and then you have the words saying what's going on. And then says, "Yeah, bad guy got away."
Bad guy got away, which
and is living in France today.
You wouldn't do a lot of that today, anyway. Like making a movie like that,
right?
And obviously, he probably isn't still living in France right now. He's probably dead, but he
got away with it.
I don't know. He could be alive. I don't know. But he got away.
But French Connection 2, there's more to the story.
So there you go. You'd have to continue next season when we do it next season, maybe, or another season. I don't know. Whenever it's going to be Paul's pick on that one because he's seen it and loves that movie. But yeah, I would love to do French Connection 2 at some point.
Well, I need to get this on Blu-ray because I don't have it.
You don't even have French Connection 1.
Oh no, I have that on DVD. I just don't have it on Blu-ray.
Right. So let's talk about the Blu-ray real quick. So here it is. As you see, it's the filmmaker signature series, William Friedkin. Well, that's a spy museum.
Yep. Awesome. I love spy.
And this is Trust No One. There you go. All right. So there's a commentary by William Friedkin, just by himself. There's another one with Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider. I think that's awesome. Isolated score track, trivia track, deleted scenes with optional commentary by director William Friedkin.
I'd love to see deleted scenes.
Yeah, I wonder what they took out. Man, I wonder if they had a scene where they explained how they did it in 4 hours.
Maybe there's a scene with puppets.
Anatomy of a Chase, Hackman on Doyle. Friedkin and Grosso remember the real French Connection. So I think that's about them actually talking about
what really happened.
Really happened. I'm wondering who Grosso is. Is that somebody from the actual real thing, or is that it says Friedkin and Grosso? I don't know who that is. Scene of the crime, cop jazz, the music of Don Ellis, Rogue Cop, the noir connection, and Making the Connection, the untold stories of the French Connection.
Well, that's interesting, yeah, because you do see a lot of rogue cops in a lot of the noir movies from the 40s and 50s.
So maybe they were inspired. It's funny how people get inspired from something else, but make something that inspires other people completely in a different way. So, yeah, this was a fantastic film from start to finish. It was brutal at times. It was
you actually get to see them eating escargot. Ooh.
Yeah, that you didn't like that.
Yuck.
Yeah. I've never eaten it, so I can't.
I love me some French food, but not snails. Sorry.
You'd rather have the baguettes, It was cool. I really liked that it took place mostly in New York, but it did have the French connection and had French stuff in there. So I like that. I was happy with that. Because you don't really see, it's almost like you said, it's a time capsule of that time period of. And you said Marseille is probably still as dirty and, I don't think it's not cleaned up, and a lot of the drugs and stuff still comes through that, right?
Right. Yeah.
But does it come to America like that?
It's probably different now, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not.
Do you think this true story is the reason why it's different?
Probably not. I couldn't tell you. All I know is that the real go-betweens were the Italian mob, who got it for the French, who got it from other people, and that was their way in. And most of the mob is, no longer involved. I'm not saying they're gone because they're not, but they don't have that kind of clout anymore. Now it's different. Now it all comes through South America and Mexico. So
That's true. Like, and then it gets smuggled into the United States and everything. And it seems like I don't know how it is really, but like I feel like drugs are worse because no because people put other shit in it that that like can kill people and shit like
sure,
you know.
fentanyl.
And so like I would say drugs. I mean, drugs are bad. We
Drugs
don't
are
we don't
bad. Okay, you
you know
shouldn't do drugs. Okay?
yeah we don't condone doing drugs. I don't do drugs, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't do drugs.
I do
Uh,
cookies,
he does cookies. He does those like little whatever uh what are they called?
chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, it was chocolate chip cookies with weed in them. Wheat cookies.
Oh God, no! I just eat regular cookies.
Oh, I thought you were talking about wheat cookies because I think you've done something like
I've
that
done a
before.
couple edibles in my
Yeah.
day, but no, I don't. For the most part, I just eat regular old cookies.
Yeah.
They're enough for me.
They're enough for him. I have my vices of soda and
Yeah, no,
other shit.
my only other real vice, Coca-Cola Company, is Coke Zero.
I have well, I'm done. See, I already drank all of my
Sponsor
we
us.
both drank
Sponsor us.
all of our I do cherry Coke, he does, what's a Coke Zero.
Mm.
So sponsor us, Coke.
Actually, use your products
We use your
all the
products
time.
all the time anyway. You might as well just give it us to free, and then we'll talk about it in every episode. We do
Right. You
Coke.
don't have to give us money. Just give us drinks.
Yeah, we don't care about money. We want free soda. We'll live with that, you know. But anyway, to go back, and it's actually that leads to a funny thing is we noticed there was a lot of sponsorship in this movie. Like we saw like Pan Am, we saw what was the flight like that he took?
Oh, Eastern Airlines.
Eastern
All these
Airlines.
companies that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, these companies that don't exist, not because of this movie,
No.
but just they just don't. But once again, it's a time capsule. You
Yeah.
look back at this, and
$54 to fly from New York City to Washington D.C. round trip.
you mentioned that.
Oh, it's crazy.
Let me see what I put some notes down. First note I said is the guy got shot over some bread. But it wasn't, but it looked like that. Like if somebody saw like you shoot him and then take the bread, like you just shot him for
I
bread.
mean, it's French bread. I wouldn't waste it either.
The Santa Claus outfit was pretty funny. Like just seeing, I've never seen Gene Hackman as Santa Claus. You know,
Hacker claws.
uh, let's slash the guy slash. Oh, we forgot to talk about that song that was in the.
That was an awful, awful 60s kind of song, lounge song.
It was a loud song.
Everybody's going to the moon.
Everybody's going to the moon,
And
and
I
then
have to put in a word that rhymes with spoon.
yeah, he says spoon, and I'm like, wait, what?
The hell?
And then they're like talking about June,
Popular music was a
and
little different back then.
it was like
Garbage.
these amazing African American ladies who were, I mean,
Yeah, they weren't the problem.
they
It
were
was
the
the
problem. It's the
song.
song. They sang really wonderfully, and they were pretty as
Oh yeah,
hell.
they were
They
nice.
were good to look at. I was happy with that. Just that song. It
Ugh,
was almost like listening to one of the 80s like songs that we did for Indie Film Cafe where like
it's like a nonsense.
what's that country song with the
Oh God, you're talking
um
about Gut Even?
yeah,
Yeah.
get even, yeah. And there was the other one or Birdemic's
Having a party
with my
with my
family.
family. Yeah, rough.
Because like you have to listen to those songs.
Or Mystery Science Theater 3000 when they do the Angel's Revenge, and it's the shine, shine, shine your love, shine your love, shine your love.
That's funny.
Garbage lyrics that make no sense. Yeah.
Yeah, this movie. Oh, I mean, which is funny because this movie
Pre-disco.
doesn't really, this movie really like everything else was great, and then we get that music, and it's like in the beginning of the movie, and you're like,
Yeah, it's very much a
hmm,
1971 time capsule. So
yeah,
get used to that.
yeah, which I liked. Once again, I think I would love to explore like the commentary tracks and hear more
I
about
mean,
the making of it.
think about it this way. I mean, we make a movie now, today, 50 years from now, they're going to look back and say, oh my God, these people, look at the clothes, look at the cars, listen to the music. It's such a time capsule. Look at the clothes.
But I'm just gonna say this. back in the 70s, like they had like the afros and the crazy Saturday Night Fever type disco stuff or whatever. The early 70s they did not, because that was like late 60s.
Yeah, it was
So
more like
still
a
it's like
60s
the
vibe
60s vibe more or so.
when
But
funk was king.
that was the thing. 60s had a certain look, 70s had a certain look at some point, 80s had a certain look, 90s had a look, 2000s did not have a look. You can't look back and go, oh man, people wore jeans
Uggs.
and t-shirts, Uggs, Crocs,
Yeah.
whatever. But like those aren't really that fashionable kind of thing. Now I do see people wearing like weird shit, and stuff as a fashion statement. But I think those are just like they're just peacocking. They're just trying to get attention with the shit that they wear. They don't wear this like they wear it out to like an event so people can see them in this crazy shit. They don't wear it out like regular public, or whatever. So like the fashions today is I think 2000s to 2020s, there really hasn't so far been like a trend of like, things.
And I'm glad we don't need it.
Well, I think, you know why? I think the internet.
Well, no, it's because all of the stuff, people that made that stuff, it's now done super cheaply over in China. It was different back then when we made stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, more creativity.
Yeah. No, and then
Yeah.
today it's just cheap, mass produced junk like everything else.
Maybe they'll go back, fix that up so we have,
Don't expect it.
but you don't want it, do you?
Not really. Who cares? I wear t-shirt and jeans. I'm very simple.
Yeah, but I mean, you wear that to work too, right? All right, well, but some people don't have that option. They have to wear something, whatever, suits and ties and other shit. And so they want to look good and fashionable
And
and
that's
stuff.
why I got a job where I don't have to wear a suit and a tie.
There you go. No, not yet. Maybe if you
No,
move up a little bit, you might have to.
there is nowhere up for me to go. I'm
For
good
real?
where I'm at. Yep.
Okay. Well, there you go.
I run my program. That's all it needs.
Yeah. I don't know. Was there anything like, because you talked a lot about with me about like the real life stuff that happened and everything.
I'd love to do a special program talking about the French Connection and about the different movies. And hell, I'd love to do a show on that period of time in New York City. Because, like I said, there are, you know, 30 or 40 really good movies set in and dealing with that time period and the things that happened in that time period. And
That
like
led to one, led to
with
another, led to
crime, with the
another.
mob, with the city, with stuff that was going on. New York City was the place to be back then, and there was a big art scene in there. A lot of movies were made there. A lot of music was there. The punk scene, everything kind of exploded in New York City at that period, and it was just an amazing time, an amazing place that's just kind of in the history books now.
I think the editor of this, like later on, went to work with Brian De Palma a lot. Not just on like Scarface, but like a bunch of other of his films. His film sort of came in at the post of all that. Where I think where things were starting. You know, Scarface was more about was Colombia, right? Or
Well, Miami.
Miami, Miami, and the stuff that happened there and everything. And that time period.
Say hello to my little penis.
That's not what he said, folks. I don't think so. That sounds like something out of a fucking well, other than a porno, out of a fucking Family Guy episode.
Flying lawnmowers back.
I don't know if you can hear that or not. Probably. We have there's a ton. We live right by a
It's like a little airport.
airport. Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I think those are coming from Newport News. So we're somewhat by it, like close
They
enough.
have real planes at Newport News. That's the little puddle jumper.
Uh, Anywho, I think that's about it. I mean, if you haven't seen French Connection, we ruined the whole fucking movie for you, but go see it anyway, because
It's worth it.
just us talking about it won't shouldn't deter you from watching it. Actually should make you want to watch it more. But yeah, it's definitely one of those films that I feel like people should
A 3D version.
for French Connection in 3D. from IMAX. Um, yeah, we absolutely love this movie, and it was definitely a movie I feel like should be talked about more. I don't feel like I hear a lot of people like even mentioning it anymore. Just as you said, you haven't seen it in 25 years. I don't think you've really thought about it in that much time or
a
whatever.
million, trillion, billion movies. So
I know. But I figured we'd have to watch a William Friedkin movie. I mean, I could have done
freaking movie.
Exorcist freaking movie, Friedkin movie. And I could have done Exorcist because we're getting kind of close to the spooky time of year, but figured French Connection doesn't get talked to. Exorcist probably gets talked to death about anyway. French Connection doesn't get as much love. I will be reviewing on my Blu-ray hunter by myself, Cruising, with Al Pacino. So I'll be reviewing that, but it'll just be me. So it won't be like
and that is also set in roughly the same time period, just before the Stonewall riots, and that's another big sea change that happened in America and in New York City. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a decent film, very controversial.
very gotcha.
Not definitely did not get the love that French Connection did, and it's not the same level of being good, but it's still a decent film.
William Friedkin was one of those directors that did not give a fuck if he was
Nope,
controversial or not.
nope.
In fact, he wanted to be controversial, I'm sure, because that got people talking and whatnot. I mean, I guarantee you, when people left the audience in this movie, they were pissed
Well,
that.
the original story was not set in the underground gay S&M
Oh,
world
you're talking about for cruising?
for Cruising,
Yeah.
but that was sort of the thing that was going on in 1979, 1980. So he simply took the basic book part, and put it into that world, and put the murders and the thing that was going on there, and that's the thing that happened. And so, I mean, I thought it was really interesting because it's a world that nobody would have thought about. It certainly was never shown in
Mm,
Hollywood before, so you got to give the man props for that.
right.
But it was a bit of an uneven film.
Yeah. So yeah, so for freaking right now you can pick up cruising from like the Barnes and Noble 50% off arrow sale that's happening right now. So if you want to that's where I got it from my Barnes and Noble.
But not this one.
No, this one is I guess through 20th Century Fox. What I was trying to say earlier was like 20th Century Fox is now owned by Disney,
Yeah.
and Disney doesn't give a crap about this property as much. So they are sort of giving it to other people. Like that's why Criterion Channel has instead of Hulu or whatever has French Connection, which unfortunately has the whole controversy in itself of editing the N word and whatnot. Which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. Like don't edit the movie because like
Censored.
um yeah, it's censorship and it's stupid. It's like it's that time period. Anybody who gets mad because there are people right now that are getting mad that there were people who spoke like this back then. Well, guess what? Get over it. That's how they talk. That's how it is. It sucks.
Find another movie.
It sucks. Don't watch it. Don't watch it if you can't handle the N word being used. You can't watch any Quentin Tarantino movie then. Thank God Tarantino doesn't give it neither shit to Disney. I don't think. Well, Miramax was Disney originally, or whatever. It is Disney, I think. So, anywho, so yeah, that's about it. I think that wraps it up. And next month will be your pick. I have no idea what you have. I don't think you have an idea which
Oh, I got a whole slate of
you have
stuff.
a
It's just
slate, but
whatever kind of gets in my mood.
yeah. So this got in my mood. He was happy with it. We
Good
decided to
movie.
do it. So and join us next month for a brand new episode. Until then, everybody, bye.
Bye.